So Rougham Estate, we're farming about 1,000 hectares. It's all combinable crops plus sugar beet. The combinable crops that we're growing is wheat, barley, oilseed rape, sugar beets. We also grow rye, and we're also having a go this year at growing some spring rye. We were pretty fortunate back in the autumn that we got quite a lot of our autumn sown crops in the ground. I think out of our sort of 300 odd hectares of wheat, we only managed to not plant about 9 hectares of it. Northern end of the farm is much more rye dominated. The southern end is sort of more medium clays, and that's where a lot more wheat is in the ground. But yeah, generally things have established pretty well in the autumn, and we always try and drill stuff as early as possible, spring crop wise, just to try and catch any rain, and also just trying to get nitrogen on as quickly as we can and as early as we can. So last couple of years, we've adopted like a 2-split program on our cereals, on our wintersown cereals. So big sort of hit of liquid, which is also sort of nitrogen plus sulfur, and then sort of try and follow that close round with urea and taking it up the second dose, with a view that it takes longer for that urea to break down. And it just sort of opens up the gap, but at some point you hope that you have a bit of rain that will wash it in the ground and the crop can utilise it. So it sort of can be a bit of a risky strategy, but you know, getting a lot of nitrogen on early, but I just find it pays off more, particularly when you get a year like this year or last year. Progress wise, I mean, oilseed rape, although we have lost a little bit to flea beetle sort of earlier on in the season, you can definitely see the effects of flea beetle in the crop. You know, crops are shorter, stunted, sort of a colder early sort of start to spring in March just didn't really allow some of these crops to get away, even though they sort of had put some good growth on over the winter. You can certainly see where the greater fertility is in the soil, and it's fertility that is sort of probably helping against the flea beetle issue. Okay. But spraying wise, I mean, there's a sort of point where we're about halfway around our T1s at the moment. Okay. Might be a little bit further on with that, but you know, we'll get up when we can. Winter barleys, they've just received Turple, and we're just sort of trying to eke out the gap between T1 and sort of the next fungicide, so that will probably go on next week, and hopefully that will catch a bit of the awns and what have you. Rye, that's had its come out of flag leaf and had a sort of turple and fungicide on that, and so that's sort of been really motoring away, but that's what rye does. You can have some really short intervals this time of the year between sprays. Sugar beet has been a bit variable. Some has germinated and just really sort of got flying out of the ground. Other crops have just been a bit slow to germinate and just waiting for a decent bit of rain that we've now had to really get them going. Crystal ball moment. It's probably going to be around the 3.5 tonne a hectare mark. You know, it's just going to drag the average down a bit. But I mean, rape's one of those surprising crops. You can have some really shocking looking crops, but it just seems to deliver, and you don't really know where that yields come from. And then you get some other cracking looking crops and they just never produce the goods. One of the things that I'm just noticing is that, you know, wherever we've had a history of putting muck on or better bits of soil or probably more open bits of land. I mean, at Rougham we have quite small fields surrounded by trees and hedgerows and woodlands. You know, if you can just pick the better fields, then you know, it gives you a bit more of a standing chance. I mean, the one thing that I have noticed this year is that hybrids seem to have coped a lot better. They still come under attack, but I'm not sure whether it's a combination of whether you're planting at a lower seed rate, and so you have less plants per square metre fighting over the same amount of nutrient, or whether it's just that hybrid vigour. But I have just found in the spring, the hybrids have seem to have just kept on steadily growing away from flea beetle, whereas the conventionals have just suffered a bit more. Always thought that you won't have two similar seasons, especially not the season that we've just had. But I don't know, I think with farming now, it's going from one extreme to the other. And so you kind of have to try and build up some resilience in your business to cope with that. I mean, we always have quite a good spread of drilling anyway because of the crops that we're growing. We do have blackgrass, but in certain situations. So, you know, we can target bits early where we don't have a problem and then leave those blackgrass areas until we're sort of confident that, you know, enough has come through, and hold off for as long as possible so that if it does turn wet, you know, we haven't got a huge backload of work. I would imagine if you haven't got a huge amount of winter cereals in, you're going to be looking to try and get wheat in earlier than perhaps what you have done over the last few years. We've had some really good autumns the last few years up until the last one. And so we've sort of been able to get on later and later. But yeah, for us, it probably won't change a huge amount. There might be a bit of remedial work, just particularly where sort of stuff has maybe sort of gone down a little bit sad, where we've had a huge amount of rain on it. But I suppose the other thing that with us that I've noticed over the last few years is that we put a lot of muck on over the last few years, and it's just giving us not a huge amount more percentage terms of organic matter, but we are just finding that things don't cap over, or it just gives a bit more resilience and just sort of is opening up those days that we can work. So that all has its benefits, really. Just from a wheat point of view, we grow some Skyfall on a Warburton's contract, and then the rest of our wheat area is all Group 4 hard wheats. So we're a mixture of Graham, Gleam, Chabras, some Kerrin as well. Although we do get Septoria, our biggest sort of problem most years is yellow rust. And so that's always sort of a prime target of ours. I mean, early on in the season, sort of T0 timing, we weren't seeing a huge amount of disease, a little bit of Septoria on some sort of older leaves. And so some places got a T0, sorry. Others, we just a bit of growth regulation and walked away from them, particularly if they're sort of later drilled. But it's those later drilled ones and those ones that didn't get T0 that are really starting to show up with some yellow rust in them now. But yeah, going forwards, let's see what the weather does between now and then, and how crops respond to it, really. Obviously, if they're looking like they've got some potential and there's more disease about, and maybe a bit more Septoria about because we've had a bit of a wetter time, then yeah, it'll be down the SDHI route. If it comes back dry again and, you know, reduced potential, then probably some of the better crops will be still in SDHI, but those sort of further behind, it might be a bit more sort of traditional chemistry, really. So